The website Gawker is occasionally really quite profane. Gawker is known, for example, for posting celebrity sex tapes. Gawker also occasionally breaks real news, as they did with this story that they did on the shirtless Craigslist ads, which resulted in a married, family values New York Republican resigning from the United States Congress. Gawker also occasionally breaks big news, as they did with this dump of photos of the security contractors who were charged with guarding the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. They were guarding the embassy in Kabul until this story came out, and these photos were posted on Gawker, at which point they weren't in charge of guarding that embassy anymore. So the website Gawker is often profane. It is occasionally great. And it is, frankly, the kind of online news outlet that it can occasionally stop you in your tracks. Today, Gawker stopped me in my tracks when they ran a short feature story, a short, mostly pictures, but a feature story on a statue, a really, really, really big statue in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, I have been to Nashville. I've been to Nashville more than a few times. I can never remember seeing this statue, though. Or maybe if I did, my brain went into save yourself mode and erased it from my memory. This is a terrifying thing. It's 25 feet tall. It's a bunch of different colors. Look at the eyes. Terrifying blue marble eyes. And look at the teeth. This thing has a mouth like a circular saw. Look at those chompers. I mean, terrifying, right? It looks a little bit like, I know what you're thinking, it looks a little bit like Scary Lucy, that bronze statue that was supposed to be Lucille Ball in her hometown. And then the locals asked the nice artist who made it to please take it down because it was scaring the children. It looks a little bit like Scary Lucy, but I think this Nashville one is even more viscerally terrifying. And that's in part because it is 25 feet tall, and it apparently looms over Interstate 65 with those terrifying blue marble eyes and those chomper teeth. But it's also scary because of what it is, what it depicts, what it stands for. James Earl Ray is the man who shot and killed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in April 1968. He was King's assassin. James Earl Ray fled the scene after the killing. He actually got over the border into Canada. Once he was in Canada, he got himself a fake passport somehow. He eventually fled to the United Kingdom. But a couple months after he shot King, they finally picked him up at the airport in London, England. They caught him out for the fake passport, and he was extradited from the UK back to the United States to face trial for killing Martin Luther King. And in 1969, a little bit less than a year after the killing, James Earl Ray was convicted. Now, ultimately, he pled guilty to that crime, but for a long while, actually, he and his attorney was a guy named Jack Kershaw. He and his attorney put forward this theory that James Earl Ray didn't actually kill Martin Luther King. They put forward this theory that said that James Earl Ray was actually just the fall guy for the crime. And actually, the guy who killed Martin Luther King was a man named Raoul. Even years after James Earl Ray went to prison, even after James Earl Ray once escaped from prison for a few days before he was recaptured, Jack Kershaw, James Earl Ray's attorney, kept going on and on and on about this Raoul theory.
James Earl Ray is in solitary at Brushy Mountain Prison in Tennessee. The last of the 5 men who broke out with him last Friday night was caught this morning. And today's Ray's lawyer was on hand. So was Eric Burns to report on what the lawyer had to say about his client.
Really, the rattlesnakes are vastly...
This is Jack Kershaw. He's James Earl Ray's attorney, and he talked to Ray this morning. He told reporters that Ray is okay physically, exhausted mentally, and sorry he tried to escape. And he said there was no conspiracy to help Ray escape.
I think we can discount the outside help business now. If there'd been any outside help, there'd have been some sort of helicopter or something waiting in the backyard.
Did he plan the escape?
No.
Who did?
Don't know.
Ray refused to talk to these investigators for the House Assassinations Committee today, but he will talk to them later, Kershaw says. Kershaw also says that he has a picture of the man named Raoul. According to Ray, Raoul was the brains behind the plot to kill Martin Luther King. Kershaw says that he will show this picture sometime in the next 2 months after he has asked the court for a new trial for his client.
So that was the defense attorney's defense. That was the attorney's defense for the man who killed Martin Luther King. He said, it wasn't my client, James Earl Ray, even though he went to prison for this. He didn't actually do it. It was really some guy named Raoul. And there really wasn't much more to it than that. He just asserted there was a Raoul in the picture. And that brilliant "it was Raoul" defense did not fly. And James Earl Ray never got out again, either legally or by escaping. And he died in prison in 1998. But the attorney, the guy who represented James Earl Ray and came up with the Raoul defense, Jack Kershaw, lived out his days as an ardent, proselytizing segregationist. Jack Kershaw was in the White Citizens Council. He was in the League of the South. He was an unrepentant activist segregationist. And he was also an amateur and terrible sculptor. James Earl Ray's defense attorney is the guy who made this absolutely terrifying 25-foot-tall fiberglass sculpture that looms over Interstate 65 in Nashville, Tennessee. The defense attorney for the man who assassinated Martin Luther King made this thing. And even though this statue does look a little like Scary Lucille Ball, who it actually depicts is Nathan Bedford Forrest, the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, sometimes credited as being the founder of the Ku Klux Klan. Nathan Bedford Forrest was also a high-ranking general in the Confederacy, and this statue along I-65 in Tennessee is supposed to inspire you to revere him. Now, to help with that, just in case any of this isn't clear enough, the statue is surrounded by, I think, I'm counting, 13 Confederate flags on giant flagpoles. So that's very subtle. Welcome to Nashville. Today, in the wake of the massacre of African-American churchgoers in Charleston, South Carolina last week, today, a Democratic candidate for mayor of Nashville proposed that the city of Nashville might try to do something about this giant founder of the Klan sculpture wrapped in Confederate flags that they've got on the side of the interstate heading into town. Today, Nashville City Councilor Megan Barry suggested that maybe the city or the state could put up, I don't know, trees or shrubs or something to try to block the view of this thing at least. Now, the trick here is that this thing is on private land. It's on land owned by one of Jack Kershaw's friends. And today, that friend who owns the land on which that sculpture sits, he told Nashville Public Radio, basically, bring it on.
I've got some 1,800-foot flagpoles. I can put them up starting tomorrow, and they're going to have to build a hell of a wall and a hell of a bunch of trees to block all that. Slavery was the first form of Social Security. Stop and think about it a minute. It was a cradle to the grave proposition. They never had it so good as far as job security to begin with. It wasn't the best of job security, but it had benefits.
That's the man who hosts the giant Klansman Confederate flag private memorial along Interstate 65 in Tennessee. Interestingly, when you ask him about the quality of the sculpture itself, he admits that the statue is terrible. He admits that Jack Kershaw was not a good sculptor. But he says he wants to keep that Klan sculpture up there, and he says he'll fight to keep it, specifically because he believes in the Confederacy.
As an artist, mediocre. As a thinker, he was way ahead of a lot of people at his time. Jack got some materials that I used to make bathtubs with, and he started with a butcher knife. That's the end results that you see out there right now.
To a lot of people, this monument is a symbol of racism.
Any monument is a symbol of racism if you are going to make it a symbol of racism. Now, I've been accused of being racist. Now, if I was racist, why have I got so many blacks working for me? Still consider this the 6th largest nation in the world, Confederate State of America.
Confederate States of America. So, congratulations, Tennessee. You now have this to deal with. I mean, all Klan statues and Confederate flag displays are to some degree terrifying. It's kind of the idea of them. This one is slightly more terrifying than usual because of the quality of the sculpture. Oh my God! Gawker's headline on this today was perfect. Alarming statue of a racist and horse perfectly honors the Confederacy. Perfect. Well, Tennessee now has that alarming statue to contend with anew in the wake of Charleston, but that one's on private land, so they're up against the guy who still believes he's living in the Confederacy and knows what he's up against and wants to fight for it. But here's the one that's on public land. This one's also in Tennessee. This is the bust of the same Nathan Bedford Forrest, which stands not on some private land somewhere, but on the grounds of the Tennessee state capitol. This Nathan Bedford Forrest statue is 4 feet tall. It's been there in the Capitol since the 1970s. Tennessee's Republican Governor Bill Haslam said today that he now wants this Nathan Bedford Forrest bust taken out of the Tennessee state capitol. Now, it's interesting. There was a law passed in Tennessee in 2013 that makes it almost impossible to remove Confederate monuments in Tennessee when people object to them. Because of that new law passed by Tennessee Republicans in 2013, it's going to be really hard to remove that founder of the Klan bust from the Tennessee state capitol. But the Republican governor of the state now says he will support any effort to do that. Governor Bill Haslam also now says that he wants the state of Tennessee to stop issuing Confederate flag license plates. That actually shouldn't be hard at all. Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe today just ordered the state of Virginia to stop issuing Confederate flag license plates. He cited last week's Supreme Court decision, which allowed the Texas state government to deny requests for Confederate flag specialty plates. And as the Democratic governor of Virginia today, Terry McAuliffe just ordered the state transportation department to stop issuing these plates and to issue replacement plates to anybody in Virginia who already has one on their car. I have no idea what's going to happen when 1,677 Virginia vehicle owners who paid for Confederate flag license plates and who have them on their cars now, I have no idea what's going to happen when they get their replacement plates in the mail without the Confederate flag on them. But apparently in Virginia, that is about to happen. In North Carolina, Republican Governor Pat McCrory says he wants the legislature to get rid of the Confederate flag license plate in North Carolina. It looks like he probably could just do that himself if he wanted to, thanks to that Supreme Court ruling, at least as far as I understand it, and based on extrapolating from the Terry McAuliffe experience in Virginia. But in North Carolina, Pat McCrory says he wants the legislature to do it instead of him doing it himself. In Kentucky, the Republican candidate for governor of Kentucky has called for the statue of Jefferson Davis, president of the Confederacy, to be removed from the Kentucky state capitol. In Alabama, the state legislator who sponsored legislation to take the Confederate flag down from the Capitol Dome in the 1990s has now introduced further legislation today to take the Confederate flag off the Confederate memorial that's on the state capitol grounds, too. That, of course, is the same fight that's unfolding with lightning speed in South Carolina right now. There are some really interesting developments on that, which we're going to get to a little later on this hour. But overall, we are at a really amazing inflection point right now. Like even just in this 24 hours of this news cycle, right? I mean, where is this stuff going to go? Right? It looks like there's so much momentum right now to pitch all of this stuff. Maybe all the stuff is going to get pitched, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's all going to be proposed that it be pitched, and it really is going to stick around despite this furor, despite this flurry of new discussion, despite this outpouring of purported new understanding about the power and pain of these symbols after the massacre in Charleston. But, you know, it's not a done deal. And it's not clear that it will be a done deal anytime soon. For example, in Georgia, Republican Governor Nathan Deal in Georgia, he was asked today about the Confederate flag license plate in his state. Unlike all the other governors in the deep South states today that said that maybe there's some way that these things can be taken care of, maybe these things should be gotten rid of. Today, Nathan Deal in Georgia says he, quote, doesn't have a problem with it. And Georgia's got an interesting history around these things in terms of state symbols. Before 1956, this had been the flag of the state of Georgia. But in 1956, after Brown v. Board, right, in the throes of the civil rights movement, Georgia in 1956 changed its flag from that one to this one. Subtle, right? It's not like that had been their flag since the Civil War. They put the Confederate flag on the Georgia state flag in 1956, in the 1950s, specifically to stand for segregation, to stand against civil rights for black people. 1956, they did that. Now, Georgia eventually had to change that. It took forever. It took a decade. It took a couple of false starts. It took a bunch of politicians losing their jobs, but Georgia eventually got themselves a normal flag again in 2003. They dropped the Confederate flag one in 2003. But when it comes to dropping the Confederate flag license plate, Republican Governor Nathan Deal today says he isn't ready for that. Doesn't see the need. Like to keep the Confederate flag license plate in Georgia. He's okay with it. So we're experiencing this rush now, right? This kind of rush to make up for lost time, this rush to at least propose getting rid of the symbols of white supremacy that we have let linger in our country for a long time now. In the past 24 hours, this has taken a very fast corporate turn as well. Walmart, Sears, Kmart, eBay, Amazon, Etsy, all saying they would stop selling Confederate flag stuff. But, as that happened, people also started buying the Confederate flag like it was going out of style, because maybe it is. Sales soaring, thousands of % on Confederate flag merchandise before these retailers stopped selling them. Get them while they're hot. And governors like Georgia's Nathan Deal said, no, actually, we'll keep our Confederate flags on our license plates. And in this state, the one state that still has the Confederate emblem on its official state flag, in that state, the leading conservative political figures in the state started feeling a little shy today about changing anything, started to say, maybe they're going to keep their Confederate symbols even on the state flag. What we are living through right now is, at least on the surface, we're having this sort of lightning-fast recalibration of what's okay and what's not okay when it comes to overt racism and the overt symbols of the white supremacist movement, past and present. What we're dealing with right now is a sort of recalibration, a new reckoning of what's okay and what's not okay on private land and on public land and as government speech and in American politics and in conservative politics specifically. We are experiencing a moment of really fast movement right now, but that does not mean we are experiencing a new consensus. What has just started here is a fight, and it is unpredictable as to how it's going to turn out, but the fight is on.